Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 2 of the relatively new review series which we started last week, called Party in the Back, the review series for the estate cars or wagons of GranTurismo 6. And in this episode we're featuring a relatively rarely used model of the wagon lineup compared to some. It's the 1998 Mitsubishi Legnum VR-4. In some ways, this is kind of like the slightly more sensible older brother to the Evo, in a similar way that the Legacy is to the Subaru Impreza. That said, it is still a very high-performance car, just like Subaru is with the Legacy. And I would personally say that this is a very good-looking car. It's a much more aggressive and aggressively styled car when compared to most of the other wagons in the game. It has almost a predatorish look to the front grille and headlight arrangement. And that is echoed in its driving style. As I said, in some ways it feels a bit more grown up in the way it delivers its power and its handling when compared to the rawness of the Evo. That said, it's still a highly competitive track machine. The engine is slightly larger, interestingly, than the Evo at 2.5 litres compared to the Evo's 2 litres. And it produces a pretty healthy spec. 535 horsepower and 424 pound-feet of torque. And as a general rule, most wagons from each particular country in the game tend to exhibit very similar characteristics. The German wagons, or estate cars for instance, tend to be quite powerful and very strong top end. The Japanese wagons tend to be cheaper, lighter, and more inclined towards low-end performance, be it acceleration and handling, rather than top-end power. And that is the case with this wagon. The top speed is not very good, to be honest. It can be outrun for top speed by almost any other wagon in the game, which is kind of a shame, and it doesn't really make sense, because the spec on this car is around the same level as many of the other wagons, so the fact that it's so much slower makes very little sense. This car struggles under its own power to exceed 200 miles per hour, regardless of the gearing or turbo that you choose, and that's a shame, because it does impede its all-round ability. It means that on certain tracks it's specifically not the best choice of wagon to go for. And I don't get why they've done that, because there are plenty of other wagons with very similar specs, with significantly quicker top speeds than this car. And it's not like it was built for rallying. The gearbox isn't some super close ratio Ken Block style gearbox, so it seems kind of strange that they chose to represent that as being the Legnum. But be that as it may, that's what we have to work with. And it's no slouch, despite not having the best of top speeds. I've done a drag tune for this car in the past, and it can launch off the line in well under 2 seconds, which, both for its power and its PP, are very strong. And the handling is also superb on this particular wagon. Definitely one of the best handling estate cars, I would say, in the game. Not necessarily the best, I wouldn't put my sticker of approval on it that much, but definitely one of the best at least. And as I mentioned about Japanese wagons earlier, they're generally very good value for money, very cheap to buy, and this one is no exception to that. It costs about 28,000 credits, just over, to buy, so it's a lot cheaper than many of its rivals, especially its German rivals from Audi particularly. And so the value for money is impeccable, really, on this model, despite the fact that its top speed and, to some extent, its power, to be honest, do kind of let it down. Well, no, that's not the right wording. They don't let the car down. I think polyphony has let the car down, because the car deserves to be better than it is. It has very strong acceleration, great grip, great handling, and great brakes. But compared to all the other saloons in the game, or other wagons, I should say, in the game, the top speed deserves to be higher, and overall, the engine has so much more potential than 535 horsepower. You could say that about many cars in the game, but this is just obviously the one we're talking about at the moment, and it does feel like it deserves to have more power. Now that said, it's still a very capable machine, especially for its PP level, which is 534 PP. And I'd say that's a very good PP level for this car, because many of the wagons are almost too high in their PP range, because no matter how quick or powerful they are, there are still certain physical limitations that having a wagon creates, such as the sheer size and generally weight of the vehicle, and that can work against you, especially around a track. So the fact that this car is a relatively modest, more mid-range PP, I would say is good. It means that you can down-tune the car to say 525 or 500 PP without having to sacrifice too much of its ultimate potential. Whereas with something like an Audi wagon, you'd have to significantly detune it to get it down to that same kind of level, by which time you would more likely than not be running less power than this car can, and certainly more weight. So, despite having a couple of disadvantages, it's still a fantastic car overall. I would say it's one of the best looking estate cars in the game, but that's obviously just my opinion. Kind of strange as well that we don't have the saloon version, which I would have personally loved to have that car on the game, because I prefer the Legnum, to be honest, to the Evo, and if the saloon was on the game I would use it a lot. But for now we have the Wagon, which is in itself a very good car, and if you're looking for an affordable and very strong, relatively low PP wagon, especially for twistier tracks that require more grip, braking and low-end acceleration, this is a very good one to go for. And surprisingly, it's a relatively underused model. You don't see that many people using the Legnum, so it's got the rarity factor as well. So that's it for episode 2 of Party in the Back. I'll see you guys for another episode next week, and as always, thanks for watching.